Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying this: God created relationships, and He created them with purpose. Our desires for connection, companionship, and love were planted in us by the Creator Himself. But we must remember that God's plan for our relationships is not simply about fulfilling our own desires. It is about aligning those desires with His divine purpose for our lives. We must ask ourselves, are we seeking relationships that reflect God's love and advance His kingdom? Or are we pursuing something that merely satisfies our personal needs and wants? It's crucial to understand that relationships are not just about us, they are about His glory. When we look at relationships from the lens of God's plan, we begin to understand that they are part of His broader design for our lives. They are meant to build us up, sharpen us, and ultimately help us fulfill His purpose. God created man and woman in His image, and from the very beginning He said, "It is not good for man to be alone," Genesis 2:18. Relationships were always part of God's plan to help us grow, to nurture, to reflect His love, and to ultimately draw us closer to Him. If your relationships are not fulfilling these purposes, it's time to pause and reflect. Are your desires in alignment with God's plan? Or are they driven by a world that has skewed our understanding of love and purpose? Now let's talk about our desires. Desires are natural, they are God-given. We were created with a deep need for connection, for partnership, and for love. But desires are also powerful, and when they are not aligned with God's will, they can lead us astray. The key question we must ask is, are these desires truly from God? It's easy to get swept up in what the world tells us about relationships and what society says we need to be happy. But the truth is, our desires must be tested and measured by God's word. God doesn't ask us to suppress our desires. He asks us to bring them to Him, to seek His guidance, and to make sure that our desires are in line with His will. We must ask, are my desires in line with His word? Am I seeking the kind of relationship that will honor Him and fulfill His purpose in my life? When you are uncertain about a relationship, it's time to seek God's wisdom. Wisdom is a gift from God, and when you seek it with all your heart, He will provide it. James 1:5 tells us, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach. Before jumping into any relationship, take time to pray and ask God to reveal His will. Seek His guidance, His clarity, and His peace. His wisdom will guard your heart and guide you toward relationships that are aligned with His purpose. It's not about moving ahead based on your feelings or impulses, but rather moving forward with the confidence that God is leading you. One of the clearest ways to determine if a relationship is in alignment with God's plan is by examining the fruits it produces. Galatians 5:22-23 speaks of the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. In any relationship, ask yourself, does this relationship produce these fruits? Does it draw you closer to God, or does it lead you further away from Him? A relationship that is in line with God's plan will be one that enhances your spiritual growth, one that strengthens your faith, and one that encourages you to live out God's will. If a relationship is pulling you away from God or causing turmoil in your spirit, then it is time to reevaluate whether it is in alignment with His purpose. Finally, we must recognize that God's timing is always perfect. So often we rush into relationships because we think we're ready, or because we feel like time is running out. But God knows what's best for us, and He knows the right timing for everything. Ecclesiastes 3:1 tells us that to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. Trust in God's timing and trust that He will bring the right people into your life at the right time. You don't have to force anything. Waiting on God may feel difficult at times, but it's in the waiting that God does His work in you. Be patient. Trust that He is preparing you, and He is preparing the right relationships for you. As we move forward into this new season, let us remember that our relationships should be reflections of God's love and purpose. Let us align our desires with His will, seek His guidance, evaluate the fruits of our relationships, and trust in His perfect timing. When we do this, we can be confident that our relationships will not only honor God, but will also bring the fulfillment, peace, and joy that He intended for us all along. God created relationships as a divine gift woven into the fabric of His perfect plan for humanity. From the very beginning, when He created the heavens and the earth, He declared everything good, yet in the midst of creation, God saw that something was not complete. It is not good for man to be alone, He said. And so He created Eve as a companion, a partner to walk alongside Adam, to help him fulfill his purpose on earth. This moment in the Garden of Eden reveals God's foundational design for relationships. They are not merely a human convenience, but part of His divine blueprint to enhance, support, and fulfill His will for our lives. Understanding the purpose of relationships in God's plan is essential for navigating life's journey. Relationships are not just about companionship or emotional fulfillment. They are about building something greater than ourselves. They are designed to help us grow spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, shaping us into the individuals God intended us to be. Every relationship we encounter, whether it's with family, friends, a spouse, or even colleagues, plays a role in shaping our character, our faith, and our understanding of God's love for us. The beauty of relationships lies in their potential to reflect the heart of God. God Himself, His relational Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are in perfect unity, living in eternal relationship with one another. This divine model of relationship is what He desires for us to experience in our own lives. Relationships are a means through which God demonstrates His love, grace, and forgiveness. Just as He loves us unconditionally, we are called to love one another with the same unconditional love. This love is not self-serving but sacrificial. It's the kind of love that calls us to serve, to give, and to forgive. When we understand this, relationships move beyond the transactional, they become transformative. We are not just seeking companionship for comfort, but we are engaging in a holy partnership that reflects the character of God. In the grand scheme of God's plan, relationships also serve as tools for growth. Think of a diamond in the rough. Relationships are the forces that polish and refine us. They bring out both the best and the worst in us, allowing us to face our own shortcomings, our pride, and our selfishness. Through relationships, we learn humility, patience, and the art of selfless love. It's in these interactions that we become more Christ-like. God often uses relationships to teach us lessons that we cannot learn alone, to reveal parts of our hearts that need healing, and to help us become who we were always meant to be. Moreover, relationships are central to fulfilling the calling God has placed on our lives. No one is meant to live in isolation. God created us for community. From the very start, He commanded us to be fruitful and multiply, to share life with others, to build families, and to create communities. This mandate is not just for biological reproduction, but for spiritual multiplication as well. We are meant to share the love, truth, and grace of God with others, to nurture and support one another, and to advance His kingdom. Our relationships are the avenues through which we carry out this mission. Whether it's through raising children, mentoring others, building deep friendships, or being a source of encouragement to those around us, relationships are essential for living out the calling God has placed on each of our lives. Finally, relationships remind us that we are never alone. We serve a God who is not distant or indifferent to our needs. He created us to be in connection with one another. And He continually surrounds us with His love through our relationships. When we walk through the valleys of life, when we face trials and tribulations, it is often our relationships that lift us up, remind us of God's faithfulness, and point us back to His truth. They are the hands and feet of Jesus on earth, showing us that we are part of something much greater than ourselves. When we truly understand the purpose of relationships in God's plan, we begin to see them as opportunities to reflect His love, to grow in our faith, and to live out His will. Relationships become more than just interactions. They become divine assignments that shape our character and help us fulfill our purpose on earth. We begin to view them through the lens of eternity, knowing that our relationships are part of God's greatest story and His redemptive work in the world. When our relationships align with His will, they become a source of joy, strength, and fulfillment as we walk together in His purpose. Personal desires are a powerful force within us, shaping our actions, decisions, and ultimately our relationships. The longing for companionship, intimacy, and connection is deeply rooted in our very nature as human beings. These desires are not inherently bad. In fact, they are part of God's design. He created us with the capacity to love and to form meaningful relationships, and He delights in seeing us experience the joy of connection with others. However, it is crucial to recognize that personal desires, if not aligned with God's purpose, can become a hindrance rather than a blessing in our lives. Too often we pursue relationships out of a desire for personal fulfillment or validation. We seek to fill voids in our hearts with companionship, love, or approval, but this approach can lead to unhealthy attachments, misguided choices, and unmet expectations. It's important to pause and reflect on where these desires are coming from. Are they driven by a deep longing to honor God and His purpose for our lives? Or are they influenced by societal pressures, the desire for comfort, or even insecurity? Desires can be deceptive. They can pull us toward things that seem good in the moment, but ultimately do not serve our highest good. When we allow our desires to lead us without the guidance of God, we risk making decisions that reflect the world's values rather than God's. The world tells us that love is about finding someone who makes us feel good, who meets our emotional needs, or who complements our identity. But God calls us to a different standard. His view of love is sacrificial, unconditional, and selfless. He calls us to pursue relationships that are not just about our own happiness, but about fulfilling His divine purpose for our lives and the lives of others. So how do we discern whether our desires align with God's plan? The first step is to bring those desires before God in prayer. Our desires are not something to suppress or ignore, but they must be surrendered to Him. When we bring our desires to God, we invite Him into the process of discernment. We allow Him to search our hearts, to reveal any selfish motives, and to reshape our desires according to His will. This doesn't mean that our desire for love or companionship is wrong. Rather, it means that we trust God enough to guide those desires towards something greater than ourselves. The key is understanding that God's will for our relationships is always centered on His love and purpose. When we align our desires with His plan, we find that our relationships not only bring us joy, but they also serve a greater purpose. God doesn't want us to enter into relationships simply to satisfy personal cravings. He wants us to engage in relationships that build one another up in faith, that draw us closer to Him, and that reflect His love to the world. It's in this alignment of our desires with His purpose that we find true fulfillment. Furthermore, aligning our desires with God's will requires patience and trust. Sometimes we may feel the urge to rush into a relationship or make decisions based on fleeting emotions, but God's timing is perfect. We must trust that He knows what we need and when we need it. In the waiting, God refines our desires, strengthens our character, and prepares us for the right relationships. When we are willing to wait on God's timing, we show that we trust His plan is better than our own, and that we are willing to follow His lead in all areas of our lives. Ultimately, personal desires, when surrendered to God and aligned with His purpose, become a beautiful part of His plan for our relationships. They become tools through which we can experience deep, meaningful connections with others, rooted in love, mutual respect, and spiritual growth. As we allow God to shape our desires, we will find that our relationships are not only fulfilling, but are also a reflection of His glory, His love, and His kingdom here on earth. When you find yourself standing at a crossroads in life, unsure of which direction to take, it's easy to become overwhelmed by the noise of the world. Everyone has an opinion, and society pushes us toward instant gratification, quick fixes, and shortcuts. But the reality is, when we face life's decisions, especially those that deeply affect us, we need more than just advice from the world. We need something deeper. We need God's wisdom. Seeking God's guidance is not just a practice, it's a declaration of trust in the one who created us and who knows the path we are meant to walk. Seeking God's wisdom is a surrender. It's an acknowledgement that we do not have all the answers, and that our limited understanding is not enough to navigate the complexities of life. We have to come before God with open hearts, with humility, ready to listen and learn. We are not meant to do this journey on our own. The Bible says in James 1:5, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach. God's wisdom is not hidden from us. It is readily available for all who seek it earnestly. The moment we seek it, He will provide, but we must seek it with the right heart, a heart that is open, a heart that trusts His plan over our own. God's wisdom isn't just practical, it is transformative. It doesn't just solve problems, it changes the way we approach life. When we invite God's guidance into our decision making, we allow Him to shape our perspective. He opens our eyes to things we would never see on our own. His wisdom reveals not only the right decisions, but the right motivations, the right timing, and the right actions. And it's in this wisdom that we find peace, because we know we're not alone in our decisions, and we're not making choices based on fear or uncertainty. We are making them with the confidence that God is leading us, and His way is always better than ours. But seeking God's guidance requires more than just asking for it. It requires patience and trust. God doesn't always answer us immediately, and He doesn't always reveal His plans in ways we expect. Sometimes His answers come through Scripture, other times through quiet moments of prayer, and sometimes through the counsel of wise, godly people He places in our lives. It's easy to get frustrated when we don't hear from Him the way we want to. But God's timing is always perfect, and His answers come when we are ready to receive them. We must trust that He knows what is best for us, and that His guidance is not just about answering our questions, but about shaping us into the people we need to become. God's wisdom is also expansive. It is not limited to just the immediate problems we face, but it affects every area of our lives. When we seek God's guidance, we invite Him into our relationships, our careers, our finances, our health, and our decisions about the future. His wisdom transcends what we can see, and it opens doors that we could never open on our own. We can't see the whole picture, but He can. We don't know what lies ahead, but He does. That is why we can trust His guidance, because His wisdom sees beyond our momentary struggles and into the vastness of His eternal plan for us. When we seek God's wisdom, we are choosing to submit to His authority in our lives. We are saying, not my will, but yours be done. This is not always easy. Our human nature wants to control things. We want to make our own decisions, chase our own desires, and figure things out on our own terms. But God calls us to something greater. He calls us to trust in His plan for our lives, to surrender our will to His, and to let His wisdom guide every step we take. And as we do this, we begin to see the beauty of His perfect plan unfold in ways that we never imagined. So let us remember this: when we seek God's wisdom, we are not just asking for direction, we are inviting God into our lives to transform us, to mold us, and to lead us. We are opening our hearts to a deeper understanding of His will. We are placing our trust in the one who knows the way, who has a plan for us, and who is faithful to guide us every step of the way. And as we do so, we will find that His wisdom is not just something we need, it is something we cannot live without. It is the key to unlocking a life of peace, purpose, and fulfillment in the center of His will. When we talk about assessing the fruits of a relationship, we are speaking about much more than just the surface level dynamics. It's not just about how happy you feel in the moment or how comfortable the relationship is. True assessment goes deeper than that. It's about looking at what the relationship produces in your life, how it shapes your character, your purpose, and your spiritual walk. It's about evaluating whether the relationship leads you closer to God or if it pulls you away from the life He has called you to live. When we turn to the Bible for guidance, we find that Jesus said, "You will know them by their fruits," Matthew 7:16. This is not just a principle for identifying false prophets, it's a principle for recognizing the value and authenticity of all relationships. Whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, or a partnership, the fruit it bears will tell you whether it aligns with God's plan for your life. So what do we mean by fruit? The fruit of a relationship is the evidence of God's presence in it. It's the outcome of the time, effort, and energy that you pour into the relationship. It's what the relationship brings out of you and what it encourages you to do. The fruits of a healthy relationship are visible in the way it strengthens you, builds you up, and draws you nearer to God's purpose for your life. Look at the peace it brings to your heart. Does this relationship provide a sense of spiritual calm and fulfillment, or does it stir up confusion, stress, and conflict? A relationship that is rooted in God's purpose will give you peace, even through challenges, because it is based on truth, trust, and mutual respect. Another fruit of a God-centered relationship is growth. A relationship that honors God will never leave you stagnant. It will encourage you to become a better person spiritually and emotionally. It will challenge you in ways that make you grow, not only in your understanding of others, but in your understanding of God's love, grace, and purpose for you. Relationships that build you up don't just make you feel good, they encourage you to strive for greater things, to deepen your faith, and to live out the calling on your life. Ask yourself, am I becoming a better version of myself in this relationship? Am I growing in my understanding of God's will for me? The relationship's ability to build trust is another important fruit to evaluate. Trust is the foundation of any strong relationship, and without it, there can be no true unity. The fruits of trust include honesty, openness, and the willingness to be vulnerable with each other. A healthy relationship should foster transparency and accountability. When trust is present, both people feel safe to be their true selves, and they can support each other in their individual journeys while growing together. If trust is lacking or broken in a relationship, it's a sign that something deeper is missing. And it's important to address that before it can lead to lasting damage. Equally important is the love that the relationship fosters. But not just any love, the love that reflects the love of God. In 1 Corinthians 13, we are reminded that love is patient, kind, does not envy or boast, and is not easily angered. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. This is the kind of love that a relationship should embody, the kind of love that pushes you to be more like Christ, to serve others selflessly, and to honor one another with humility and grace. If your relationship doesn't reflect this kind of love, it's time to reevaluate its foundation. The love in your relationship should encourage both people to grow closer to God and one another in ways that deepen their faith and strengthen their bond. Finally, a key fruit of a healthy relationship is purpose. Are you both moving forward with a shared sense of purpose? Relationships that align with God's will should encourage both parties to live out their divine callings. Whether you are partners in ministry, in business, or in family life, a relationship that honors God will bring both people closer to their greater purpose in life. It won't hinder your individual callings or distract you from your God-given potential. Instead, it will provide the support and encouragement needed to fulfill the destiny God has placed on each of your lives. A relationship that is truly aligned with God's plan will not only allow you to walk out your individual purpose, but will also bring you into a greater sense of unity in His plan for both of you. As we assess the fruits of our relationships, it's vital to remember that no relationship is perfect. There will be struggles, challenges, and times of tension. But when the fruits of peace, growth, trust, love, and purpose are evident, even in the midst of difficulties, you can have confidence that the relationship is moving in the right direction. However, if the fruits of negativity, division, dishonesty, and confusion are taking root, it's time to reflect and ask God to guide you toward relationships that truly reflect His will and His love. The fruits of a relationship are not just what you see on the surface, they are the deeper spiritual impacts they have on your life. So evaluate the relationships in your life today. Are they producing the kind of fruit that glorifies God and brings you closer to His purpose? Are they making you more Christ-like? Are they building you up and helping you fulfill your divine calling? If the answer is yes, then you are on the right path. If not, it's never too late to seek God's guidance and move toward relationships that align with His plan for your life. Assessing the fruits of a relationship is a spiritual exercise that requires us to look beyond the surface and evaluate the deeper, more meaningful outcomes of our connections. The true measure of any relationship is not in how it makes us feel temporarily, but in how it strengthens our faith, deepens our trust in God, and moves us toward fulfilling the purpose He has set before us. Relationships should build us up, challenge us to grow, and help us reflect the love of Christ in everything we do. As you evaluate your relationships, ask yourself, are they producing peace, growth, trust, love, and purpose? If not, it's time to seek God's guidance and realign your connections with His will. Remember, God's plan for your life involves relationships that will support, encourage, and propel you forward into the destiny He has designed for you. So trust in Him, and He will lead you to relationships that truly honor His purpose.